much we can cover for the time that we have. Okay. So I want to start by just saying thank you for having me. Thank you, Pastor Mrs. as well. And it's good to worship with you guys today. It's amazing Sunday. Hopefully you've had a great week leading up to this. Those that were at the program yesterday, can you just wave your hands? The ones that were at the dinner yesterday? Wave your hands. Okay, good. It's good to see you guys as well. Hopefully, it seems like a simple continuation from the conversation that we had yesterday, to be honest, with Pastor Lucy and his wife. So, to start with, if you let me go to the next one. We're going to be, it's not a regular Sunday service, if you will. Because I asked Pastor and I said, is it me mainly preaching or is it conversation? So I think it's more of a conversation. Because at the end of it, I want to give an opportunity for you guys to ask questions and also discuss and contribute as best as possible. Which is why I'm slightly dressed like this. It was a preaching, it would be very formal and with suit and tie. So I want to convey to you that it's more of a conversation, not preaching, not me simply just talking throughout the entire session. So we'll go through some slides and then we'll ask some questions. Now, financial well-being and sort of building wealth is sort of tag the talk or conversation that we're about to have. Next slide. A bit of a ground rules, really. It's not, what we're about to discuss is merely a discussion. There's learning, there's opportunity for us to learn. There are many people here that are further along in their own financial journey than you are, or you might be further along than others. So do give people some grace if they ask questions that you already know the answers to, or we discuss things that you're already aware of. So it's just more of a conversation for us to discuss, learn together. If you need specific financial advice, you can then seek a financial advisor to have an in-depth, because everybody's sort of financial journey is slightly different, and where you are is also slightly different. So those are sort of my ground rules, and there's no such thing as irrelevant or unnecessary questions. Every question is valid, right? If you go to the next one for me. So we would be, so a few things about finance: budgeting, emergency fund, investing, pensions, and if you have the time, we'll do sort of some side notes that I've got at the end. First of all, I want to ask, why is the conversation that we're about to have really important? What I've seen so far is this. If you go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. Why is the conversation we're having important? What I've realized over time, having worked or continuously being involved in financial services in the UK, what you realize is when it comes to our demographic, especially the Black British, Black Africans, our demographic, the numbers are not great. And one of the reasons why I do this or have these conversations when I'm invited, or even as a financial coach talking to couples or individuals as part of their finances, is for this very reason. Having spent a lot of time in financial services, I realize the numbers don't stack up for us, because either we don't know the information or we're not doing the right things to allow us to be able to grow in terms of our finances as a whole. If you see some of the things that are on the slide there, you realize in the UK, one of the ways to grow wealth is one, in property and pensions. And for us, our demographic, the amount of us that typically own any form of property is very less. It's significantly less compared to the general public. If you see one of the quotes, I said the Resolution Foundation reports that the wage gaps contribute directly to lower savings, investment opportunities, and perpetually the cycle of economic disadvantage. And also the fact that a lot of times we don't discuss about income, we don't have conversations openly about income, how to generate income, how to grow our income, conversations when we're in our working place about fighting, or not necessarily fighting, but having conversations about promotions, earning a bit more, how do you develop skills to ensure that we're getting the opportunities to earn more. So those concerns, and then pensions. A lot of us really say stuff like, why would I keep any money? I'll spend as much as I can, if who knows when I'm going to pass on or die. So as a result, they don't save anything at all. So the disparity in wealth is significant. The other reason why, if you go to the next slide, please. The other reason why is this: we don't take advantage of a lot of opportunities that are open to us that are out there. What you're looking at is some of us think that if just simply saving in a high interest savings account is sufficient. And almost always, it's not the best way to build any form of wealth. I mentioned that the first one was around property. The second thing is around genuinely investing, either via a pension scheme or some sort of investment tool. If you see there, the average savings interest rate in 2025, that was last year, was around 3%. The inflation for 2025 was around sort of 3.4 to 3.6%. So if you're saving, in 2025, you were saving in a high interest savings account, and the inflation is 3%, essentially your money goes back to zero. So the value of the money that you put in the savings plus the interest you get, again, when it accounts for inflation, you're literally getting 0.4% on your money, right? So that's probably not the best way to put your money. So a lot of us think just simply putting the savings account and that's the best way to grow it, and it's not always the case. If you look there as well at the bottom, it says bonds for 1914 to 2025, the adjusted for inflation bond rates for that period is about 2 to 2.5%. So people say, I'm just going to do safe thing, put it in bonds or things like that, but look at that and then look at inflation, right? You see it's not having any sort of impact in growing your actual money in terms of your savings. But if you then see actually investing in the stock markets in a tool that is tracking an index of some sort, you see adjusted for inflation from 1914 to 2025, the net. So if you subtract inflation, you get 6.9%, which is well above inflation. That's essentially the actual number is 10.32%. But if you remove the inflationary figure from it, you then get 6.9 over that period. So you can see that actually investing in the stock market in some form gains a lot more. Even looking at this graph, this is me using from 1914 to 2014, the growth in the stocks as opposed to bonds. You can see the difference. That's almost 2 point something million over there. That's if somebody is saving £1,000 from that period. And then this is the bonds, that's £2,992. It's a massive difference. So a lot of the time, it's because either we don't have the information, or we're not doing the right things, or we're not doing the things that ensure the consistency, right? You can then gain the reward long term. So that's why we're having this conversation, is to open our eyes to things that are possible, is to give us information that we need to be able to act and do things as a result of it, is to grow and then be able to pass on hopefully to our kids, and do something in property, as we looked at in the previous slides. Like in the UK, the majority of the wealth that is passed on from generation to generation is mainly around property. So if we were taking active steps to both be involved in some form of investments in stocks, in some form of property, that's how we then start to see the significant difference in our lives. You might not, sometimes it's like delayed gratification. You might not see the necessary impact of some of the actions that you take, but if you teach that and you pass it on to the next generation, hopefully they don't have the same sort of journey, same experience as you've had. So if you can make those decisions, if you can make those choices, you can then see the reward that comes out of it. So that is why I typically want to have this conversation, especially amongst our community. So, next slide. So, winning is not an accident. Like anything, the level of intentionality that you need to put into anything that you find important is you need to put the intentionality to ensure that you can actually get what you want out of it. Like, another is being good with money. You've got to train for it. You've got to genuinely go and acquire the information that you need to help you support the actions that you want to do. But winning is intentional. It's an intentional act. In the same way you see Roger Federer train for a number of years and continue to train, even now that he's retired, he's still, the practice is still there in his mind because it's consistent. Like if you're consistent in that act of practice or learning, over time you see the reward. I don't want to go into investments or savings or property or anything like that, or buying a property when you do this without first discussing the fundamentals and the basics. The basics first is this: if you're not managing your finance now or appropriately, the way to then get the results that you want is unlikely, right? If you don't know how much you're spending each month as expenses. Like if I asked you now, can you give me the exact number, how much it costs you to run your sort of standard expenses every month? In terms of your income, what's then left over, what's the percentage you put in your savings? Some people, essentially, it's just whatever comes, we just do as, it's like a flow. If funds come, your income come in, and you don't treat it with intentionality, it comes in and it goes. That's the same way, it's just, look at that over time. The impact of that is significant, right? So if you don't have the intentionality, I used to have a colleague that would say, I want to instruct, I know the money that comes to me would eventually go, so I want to instruct it on where it needs to go first before it completely disappears from me, right? So when it comes, I want to tell it, this is where I want you to do, before it then disappears from me ultimately, right? So the way we do that is something I refer to as a zero-based budget. The idea of a zero-based budget is very simple. You allocate, if you earn 1,700 or 1,800 or 2,000 pounds, 2,500 a month, the idea is very simple. Every pound of that money, you want to give it a name. So if you pay rent or mortgage, whatever that amount is, okay, this proportion of the money I've earned this month goes to my mortgage. This proportion is for transportation, for my fuel, for my road tax, and my insurance. This proportion is how much I put for my tithes. This proportion is how much I would give to kids in terms of allowance. This proportion, you want every pound of the money that you earn should be given a name. People say, oh, what do you mean by that? I'll give you an example. You earn £2,000 a month. Your rent is, say, £750, for example. That's £750 gone, and then you've got the balance. Right. If you send money back home to family and friends, you've got to have a budget. So you're looking at what your expenses are and your bills, right? We write them down, exactly what they are for each month. We know what those amounts are. Then we say, okay, this is all my expenses. Interrogate some of those things. If you realize some people want to have coaching sessions with them, and they've got subscriptions in there that they've had for such a long time and they've never used or done anything with, you say, okay, maybe you start to interrogate that and get it off your list. So every pound must have a name. Now, once you've assigned every pound to a name or an action or savings, my investment fund, my car purchase, whatever it is, even to the point where some people say, oh, Christmas, all of a sudden Christmas is here, or a friend's birthday, or son's birthday, your partner's birthday, and then you go, right, I'm surprised, I'm looking for money, I need to be able to do something. Christmas is not a surprise, it comes every year, right? Your birthday is not a surprise, it comes every year. The kid's birthday is not a surprise, it comes every year. So you say, okay, right, in our budget, our monthly budget, we know that our standard budget for a birthday celebration for our son or daughter, we want to spend maybe £100. Buy some cake, take them out, okay, it's fine. And the person's birthday is sometime in January of 2027. You need £150 for the birthday, which is the budget that you set, right? So 150 divided by 12, that's the amount you start to allocate to that birthday fund. So when the birthday comes, you're not like, okay, I just take from my existing expenses and pay for it, right? Your insurance, your car insurance, you might be surprised that if you pay car insurance on a monthly basis, for example, it costs you more. Right? There's a significant interest that they charge as a result of you paying it. But if you know the amount, you know you're paying maybe 700 this year. Yeah. So perhaps you pay 700 next year. So divide that by 12, put some money towards it. By the time you get to the point where you need to renew your insurance, you've got the money for it. You don't then have to take from a credit card or somewhere else to try and pay for it because you do not save for it. If you plan, nothing is a surprise. Right? You know it's coming. It's not a shock, it didn't just appear. Make sense? So, budgeting is really important. Zero-based budget is really important. I will see it as, if you're a couple, it's an opportunity for you guys to be on the same page, to actually have a conversation. Like, my wife and I, we would sit down before the end of the month, have a conversation. This is what our existing budgeting for this month has looked like. This is where we actually spent it. These are the miscellaneous or things that we didn't. We budgeted for, I don't know, a trip to go somewhere. And we didn't go as a result of something coming. And so the money is still there. We don't touch it because it's been allocated for that specific thing. Then when we have the meeting for the next month, we then have a conversation. What do you want to do with this amount? Right? Is it time to talk? First, we'll start with a prayer. We ask God to thank you for blessing us for what He's given us in terms of our income. And we go through a list. Okay, what are the things, what are the kids doing next month? What are the things that we need to account for? This person's birthday is coming. We've saved this amount over the last 12 months to get to the birthday. Or this, grandma is ill. We don't have it in the budget for last month. Maybe next month we have it in the budget. Or we have a miscellaneous and want to use it for that. So it gives you time as a couple to genuinely have a conversation with each other. And it puts you on the same page. One of the really significant issues in relationships is finance. So if you get that sorted well, you have no issues long term. It takes time to get it right. It might not be comfortable in the beginning, but if you start to do it over time, you realize this difference it can make for you as a family. Now, as part of your budget, I want you to start to think about because I want to establish the basics before going to any sort of investment or anything like that. An emergency fund. There is something called the Murphy's Law. For those Murphy's Law is if anything will go wrong, right? If anything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's the mentality that we sort of need to operate on. You go, right, I'm not sure, you're tired, you're driving, and all of a sudden, something happens to your car. Car breaks down, whatever the case may be, right? A boiler, if you've got in your home, right? Something happens back, whatever the case may be, it might be an emergency. You start to think about, okay, how do I put an emergency fund? So in part of your monthly budget, you want to say, okay, maybe we start with a fund of £500 or £1,000. How do we save up to £500 as an emergency? So £500, you might not be able to do it immediately in the first month. So break it down. Start to put some money. If it's £50, if it's £100, over 5 months, you then have £500 as a starting fund for an emergency. That way, when something happens, you're not then panicking or having to pay high interest on a credit card or get somebody, whatever the case may be, you're way more prepared than just emergencies happen. It's just the way of life. God does not promise us that because now you're a Christian, so everything else is going to run smoothly. He's giving you the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to say, okay, how do I ensure that I'm planning well and I'm doing the right things for myself, for my family, or if you're a single person, you're at university, the starter fund will be really good. Especially at university, you don't know what comes up. Something happens. You need an emergency fund. Over time, you can build an emergency fund up. So 3 months. So you've got 3 months emergency. I explained it to some colleagues back in there, and I would say to them, why would you want to have 3 months of money sitting somewhere? The way I said this to him, because he used to complain about work. He said, I have this thing that, I want to change jobs, it's just stressful, it's this. And he didn't have any savings, he didn't have anything. And I explained to him that if you have an emergency fund, this conversation will be very different. I'll tell you why. So, if you have an emergency fund, and it's essentially saying, I can self-insure myself for the next 3 months. So for 3 months, for the next 3 months, if I don't have any work or something happens to me and I can't work or I lose my job, whatever the case may be, I can self-fund for 3 months before I then need to start looking for a job. Or while that 3 months, I need to start looking for my next job. Right? So I explained this to him. I said, if you had a 3 months or 6 months emergency and you build that up, right, what you realize is the option and the conversation you have with your boss is different. When somebody is telling you or giving you aggro and you don't want to take it, I don't need this stress in my life. I can go and start finding something. I've got 3 or 6 months of emergency fund to be able to fund myself. Or, genuine emergency. So, the emergency is not, sometimes my missus will say something like, there's this trip, why don't you use the emergency fund? That's an emergency. An emergency fund is something that you can't control, something that's unexpectedly happened, and you build up to. So you start with the startup fund, and over time, you get an emergency fund that can help you over time in terms of any concerns that you might have. So it helps reduce your stress. It prevents you from getting into any form of debt, right? And some people might say, okay, why don't I get income protection? Income protection is only paid 75% of your income, and it costs you something over time. But if you self-insure, it gives you the reassurance that it's you doing it, and that money is available. Income protection is not available all at once. You can't use it. Like if your car breaks down, you can't go and touch it and use it as a result of that. It's for specifically what it is. Make sense? So, now, next one, please. we've had a chat about just budgeting, so it's important to pay attention to it. The other bit is to move on from, if you've gotten a grounded foundation, a really good foundation in your finances, you know where your money is going, you know how much you're getting, you know where your expenses are, you know the ones that are a bit variable, the ones that are fixed. You've interrogated some of them. Even some of us don't even negotiate insurance. Some of us don't negotiate even sometimes getting the best rate for our gas, our electricity, our water. Those things are out there. It can reduce your bill over time. Calling the gas company, calling the water company. If you don't have a meter, it may be something that we need to investigate and do. How can I save a bit more on transportation, right? If it means downsizing, certain things that you can do on a day-to-day to help you reduce your bill. Now, the next step, after you've laid that foundation, I want you to start to seriously think about your pension. Now, in our community especially, the conversation about pension can go a different way. You have some people that would say, right, I'm not interested in that, and this is not for me, or are you trying to say that I just want to enjoy myself? That's some people's impression. But your pension is really important. It's one of the best sort of return on investment and best tool to be able to build something long term, especially for retirement. Now, a lot of us, if you've got your workplace pension, you've got your state pension, and then you might even have your own private pension. Now, for your workplace pension, typically as a result of government legislation, the requirement for every employer to offer some form of workplace pension is now a requirement, so every employer should offer it, especially as persons start to earn above a specific threshold. You typically contribute around 5%, but it's roughly around 3.5 or 4% that you contribute. The employer contributes 3%, and then you get the additional tax relief on top of it, which makes it 5%. Now, in total, that it's sort of 8% going into your pension. If your employer, so for some of you that work in the NHS, some people that your employer offers a much more increased contribution on the employer side, think about it like this. You contribute 3, 4, or 5%, just to give you as an example, and your employer matches to 3%. For some employers, they go above. So if your employer says, like the NHS, depending on which part of the NHS that you work in, the NHS might say, we match up to 10%. But you are only doing the minimum 5%. You're just leaving money on the table. A lot of money. If your employer says we match up to 10%, that means that if you were to contribute 10% of your earnings, they contribute 10%, that is 20% going into your pension. Some people go and just stick to the 5 and they stay there, or some people just completely don't contribute at all. Now, if you stick to the 5, they will give you the minimum, which is the 5, which is their requirement. They won't go up to 10. They would match. If you go up, they'll go up. So investigate and ask your employer, okay, right, what type of pension is it? Do you guys match? Up to what percentage do you match? How can I contribute to that amount? It would have an impact on your take-home pay. But here's the thing. There's a flip side to it. If you contribute more to your pension, you pay less in taxes. If you decide, because your pension is taken out at gross, not at net. So before your taxes are taken out, your pension is sort of deducted. Make sense? So, in some instances, if you've gotten to the point where you're above the threshold, you're now in the 45p tax bracket, the percentage tax bracket, which means that above though you start to earn your earning above 50k or thereabouts, as a way to reduce the amount of taxes that you pay, why not just put that money in your pension? If you increase your pension contribution, the resulting effect is that you pay less taxes. Right? Now, if your employer matches to 10%, I would do that, 10%, and they put 10%, that's 20% going into my pension, and that reduces my taxes over time, but my take-home pay might also reduce a little bit. So there might be legible effects, it might be 500, 200, 100 pounds, depending on your specific circumstances. Right? So it makes sense, and it's probably the best way and the best tool to use and genuinely build something over time. It's optimizing for efficiency upfront. Right? If you do, it's like engineers, the way you look at it is go, okay, you turn the knob or the machine slightly, get everything right, and you do a bunch of testing. You keep tuning it to the point where the machine just sounds like somebody playing the piano. like you set the tune quite well. You keep tuning everything, every note, every bit of it, until you get it quite well, and then you just leave it to ensure that it's just growing consistent. You don't go and touch it every month, you don't go and mess with it every month, you don't. So if you optimize up front, you do the right things up front, you budget well, you plan, you have conversations, you invest in your pension, you ensure that you're contributing to it, over time you would see the reward of it. Next one. So, go to the different one. If you go back, that's it, thank you. So, preparing for retirement is a vital element of long-term planning, right? As there's an expiration date on your earnings. You can't work forever. And you will see now that people are living above 100 years old. You can't work when you're 100 years old. It's tough to physically challenging to be able to do those things. You've seen a lot of us that, if you're in healthcare or you work in any NHS, whatever the case may be, you realize that the requirements for people, especially at old age, is increasing. So if you don't have any form of savings, any form of planning that you put into place as to how you want your retirements to be, you've not discussed it with your partner, you've not actually planned it to yourself, right? You've not had that conversation before, the impact it could have on you when you get there will be really difficult. I had a chat, we just talked about the workplace pension. The state pension is slightly different. Now, you must have contributed for about 10 years, the national insurance contribution, to be able to qualify or be able to get state pension. Now, the maximum for state pension in terms of the payouts weekly is £230 per week. That's not going to go a long way. Now, let me be very clear. I'm going to be very clear. Perhaps only a few of you in here will get the full state pension. Let me tell you why. You must have worked for about 30 to 35 years to get the full state pension, right? You must have contributed national insurance contributions of around 30 to 35 years to get the full state pension, which is £230 per week. That's not enough to do anything. Yeah. But now, for a lot of the people that just if you come to the UK, now it means that if you're already behind, right? If you worked for the past 4, 5, 6 years, now add another 30 years to that and then calculate your age. It's very unlikely that you will get it. So, if you're simply saying that I'm not going to save anything else in my workplace pension, I'm not going to have any sort of savings, and I'm just going to rely on state pension when that time comes, you're going to find it very challenging. So, it's really important that we save. If it's a workplace pension, if you've got any sort of savings, you do so. Right. So let's go back, stay on the middle one. There's a third bit, there's a third pension, which is like the private one. Now, the private pension is things like your stakeholder pension, SIP. So for some, if you're self-employed, if you want to contribute in addition, because you know that you perhaps will not qualify for the state pension, you're already maxing out on your private pension in your workplace. So your workplace pension, you're already maxing out. And then you're contributing your national insurance, so you'll be entitled to state pension when you get there, but not for the entire qualifying period. So if you only do 20 years of national insurance contribution, if the maximum is 230, you're probably going to get around 100 and something pounds. Okay? So now the question is, do I save somewhere else? Do I put some money somewhere else to ensure that I'm still saving towards my retirement? There's something called a SIP, right? It's a self-invested pension plan. You can contribute to that as well. The government allows for about 40 to 60k each year to be able to contribute into that as a way to grow, planning for your retirement. You also have something like the LISA, right? LISA can also be used as a sort of retirement planning sort of tool or account, if you will. For every £4,000 you put in there, the government gives you a bonus of £1,000, right? Plus the interest that grows if it's a stocks and shares ISA. So there are many other tools you can use if you realize that I've not done this well, I'm at this stage, so what can I do to change things quickly? So can I max my workplace pension? Can I ensure that I'm contributing over my national insurance contribution, I'm working and that's going through? Do you know that you can actually buy national insurance qualifying period? So if you go on your gov.uk, you sign into an account, you can go in there and see the government will show you how many years of qualifying period of national insurance contributions that you've done so far. There will be some years where you've not contributed enough to get the full year, or there's an opportunity for you to buy previous year. A lot of you that are here, if you go and log on now, I promise you, if you've arrived in the country in the last 3, 4, 5 years, there's opportunities for you to buy previous maybe 2 or 3 years. That will then help towards your qualifying period. So you can go and buy that as well. So, and then you can do sort of a SIP and other things like that. Now, I've got less time, so 5 minutes. So, next slide, please. In terms of other retirement accounts, some of the things I would mention, you've got UK brokerage accounts like a general investment account. You've got your ISA that allows you to contribute £20,000 if you want to save in addition. A lot of these providers, they give you sort of a brokerage account if you want to invest in the stocks and shares on your own in certain stocks. But I typically want to advise it. I prefer that you go towards an index fund and do it that way, because at least you're tracking a bunch of stocks, not a single particular one. The second option is like your retirement accounts. All the providers on this side, offer it, a SIP, so they offer it. You have robo investing, so you've got stuff like Money Farm, Royaltify, Invest Engine, Money Box, Nutmeg, that is now called JP Morgan. So there's many other opportunities if you want to find other accounts to continue to save towards your retirement, right? And a lot of them would offer you an ISA, sort of a tax bracket account. An ISA is simply saying any money that is put into that account in the ISA, the growth in terms of the earnings and interest that you get, and the money there is free from any taxes. No capital gains, no income tax, no nothing. So it's a way for you to save in a very structured and tax efficient way over the long term. I haven't got much time, so I'm going to whiz through as much as possible. Now, the next slide is just essentially true success or true progress is never linear. Enduring success is never instantaneous. It's patience over time. It's taking the action, doing things well over time and being patient, and then you see the reward in the end. Next slide, please. Now, people think that what should happen is you would feel good all the time, right? The idea is when I do something, it would all go well immediately. I would achieve the objectives I want to achieve. I will get there almost. It doesn't work like that. This journey, there's what's her name? Alexi Pappas. She's an ex-Olympian athlete, and she says you're chasing a goal. You're supposed to feel good a third of the time, okay a third of the time, and crappy a third of the time, right? And this is the same ratio here in financial journey. In the beginning, it's not going to feel great because you have to. It's like living with less to ensure that you can live well later, right? It's delayed gratification. So it's not going to feel good all the time. It's just the nature of it. But if you accept that and know that this is just a specific period of season, over time that will change to me feeling okay about things, and over time I can then see really great about it. So it's not going to feel great at the beginning. It's not going to feel great 100% of the time. It's going to feel crappy sometimes. It's going to feel very challenging. It's like it's a very tight budget. How can I go? I didn't make enough this year because I'm doing contracting, or this month felt really difficult. We were jam-packed with a bunch of things. Our emergency fund has been. It's going to feel that way. But over time, you start to see the benefits of actually taking action consistently. Okay? I say I've got a tip there. It says compound interest can be helpful or powerful. The effects on the outcome of delayed gratification, especially when it comes to investing and saving. Same way. So over time, you see in the next slide. Let's see. This is an example. 3 individuals, Michael, Jennifer, and Sam. They both save £100 each month. Now, remember when we were looking at the adjusted for inflation stocks and shares rates that came true, right? Remember we were looking at it. Now, it worked out to be about 7% adjusted for inflation. These are 3 individuals. They both save for the specific time period. So Sam does for about 25 to 35 years. That's the impact of that consistency over time. Now, Michael does for about 45 to 55 years. See the impact it has over time. So it wouldn't feel great immediately. It would take time to get there. Next slide. There is volatility. It's just the nature of things. Sometimes people will look at, they'll go into their retirement account or their pensions account, and they'll look at, oh, things have come down, or this, and they start to panic. It's just the nature of how things, it's the nature of how life is, right? There's volatility. Your role is not to look at the band, start to look at the stock and, oh, the market has gone down. That's not your role. Your role is to say, pick the options, pick it wisely, pick an index that spreads your risk across a bunch of stocks. If it's property, you're buying, if it's a mortgage, you're buying a house, it will take time. Over time, you see the impact. You see that? That's over time. Right there, it was so low, but look at the point in which the market is. Today, people say the market is down. Compared to 10 years ago, it's amazing. Right? So, you put things in perspective. Right? Next slide. I wanted to show this before my time is up. Now, if you're investing £100 per month, it works out to be about 1,200 each year. If you did double that, 2,400. If you did 5,000, 10,000. I wanted to show you what the scenario would look like given the adjusted for inflation rates that we discussed, that we mentioned, I showed you earlier on when we started this. The challenging part is that first bit. The first bit. Most time, why people give up is that the beginning of the journey is pretty strenuous, right? That's why most people give up. But if you're patient, if you're genuinely patient, you would see the impact long term. Now, I didn't put the years for 0 to 100,000 because I want somebody to work it out. Now, if you look at the most challenging space to get to is the first 100,000. But people go, how am I going to save 100,000? When I say 100,000, I don't mean you saving it particularly. You're looking at your entire picture. So, how much is my pension? How much is my ISA? How much is it? You'll be surprised that you actually get to that figure way quicker. If you're getting a match from your employer, that 10% helps you get there quicker. So this is just you contributing. I've not taken into account your employer matching. I'm not taking into account you putting it in a LISA to get that additional bonus. I'm not taking into account all those other areas that can ensure that that money grows quite quickly. But you can see there that the difficult and the most challenging aspect of it is that first part of the journey. Once you pass that first part, compounding interest just starts to do its work. It's not you doing a lot anymore. Right? Your contribution to this reduces after that first 100 to 200,000. Once you get there, you start to see it really change. Now for young people, if you see this and you go, I can actually do something about it, I can start, I was discussing with somebody who just got into university and he's getting, because of his grades, got really good scholarships, he's got really good, and the result is even getting more funding. He's going to university like literally free. So all the money that he's getting, he's putting it in the license to try and save. He's getting to this figure way quicker than I thought he would, right? And I can see if you take diligent action, over time, your dad or mom might not be able to do some of this, but you could potentially do some of that. There's opportunity to get there. Now, you would see that at the end, it's taking less time. The goal here is to get to £1 million, right? If that's the goal, to an extent. But to be honest, you don't need £1 million to be able to live in a retirement really well. But you can have a decent life around sort of these figures, right? As retirement. Now, the challenging part is the most here. But if you were putting £200, the time starts to cut pretty quickly, right? If you take into account all those bonuses I receive, the time also starts to cut. And you can see the impact that has over time. Okay. So, next slide. Next one. Next one. We'll go through this now. Questions and answers. That's fine. I think that's it. Yeah. Question. So I wanted to, I don't know if questions or...
Yes, because of our time, if you've written your questions out, please, let's have them. If you haven't written your questions out and you're bold, you're all bold. But you want to ask a question, by all means, raise your hand quickly so that we can... Yes, sir. Mike.
I don't need mine. Please, you're on sponsorship and you still want to do business. How can you... Is there any way to promote that?
Okay. So you want sponsorship and you want to start a business.
Yeah, I use 20 hours for a business.
The sponsorship might restrict you to an extent, right? So if you're on a specific sponsorship and it says that you can't have any type of work other than within that sector or that job, there's another way to go about it. Now, when the house of God, so I have to be careful. I say, but guess if you have a dependent, yeah? If you have a dependent, maybe a partner, or maybe a child that is a specific age, they can be the individuals to start the business and you run it together with some sort of equity and you're not genuinely involved in it over time. But your partner could be the one that starts the business. After a while, once you've passed the period in which the sponsorship is over, you now got your residency and all that, you can then become full-time involved in it. So that's the way to go about it in some sense. Or starting with another person that genuinely can start that business and you're bringing capital. You're simply bringing capital, you're not, perhaps you give advice here and there, but you're not involved, you're not taking an earning from it on a day-to-day. Your earning can be postponed as a dividend or things like that in the future. Make sense?
Hi, yeah, very good session. Just want to ask a question in regards to the pension. What age can we assess it? And if, let's say, you cannot assess it, probably the innovator will have to pass away. Can your children have it?
Yes. So if it's a workplace pension, they would ask you to, they will give you a typical document as part of a workplace pension to nominate specific beneficiaries. And you can determine how the beneficiary could be individuals, it could be a trust, like it could depend on how you want to design it. Now, if you were speaking in front of a financial advisor, if it was a one-to-one session, for example, if the question then asks you is, okay, who are your beneficiaries? What percentage of the entire amount do you want to go to them? How do you want it to go to them? Do you want to give them a massive lump sum at the point of when, for example, do you want to give a child like 250,000? Maybe not. So perhaps how do you want to design it to ensure that they get it or they get the benefits of that money? So they would actually, workplace pension will typically ask you what your beneficiaries are. The other thing I think you said, how do you...
Yeah, what age?
Okay, so what age can you access it? Now, the current retirement age, typically, it's, I think for women, it's about 60, 63, 66 now? 67. For men, they're trying to equalize the age to be the same. So for men too, I think it's about 67, 68 too. Over this parliament, it would be the same for everybody in terms of the retirement age to be able to access it. But if you were saving in a LISA, you can access it much quicker, right? So if you're doing your workplace pension and you're also saving in retirement somewhere else, there are other tools that you can access much quicker than like your private, does that make sense? Your workplace pension.
Yeah.
So there are other tools you could use, and also the government allows for you to be able to withdraw 25% without any charges or interest. Is to encourage people to put back money or give to their kids as a way for deposit for a house. So there are other options to be able to allow you access some funds, not all of it to an extent, depending on the tool that you use. So if you were sitting in front of a financial advisor, the question they'll ask you is, okay, at retirement, how much money do you want to be able to access immediately? How do we design it as a whole to ensure that you get that amount at the point when you get there? So now we can take the action that you need to take today to get, when you get to that age, or around the time maybe 55, okay, I want to access this amount, I want to do this, yeah, I want to buy, like, I want to sell my home, I want to do this, or travel, and you can design it in that way to ensure that it fits for purpose for you.
All right, so if your children, if you pass away and your children are supposed to get it, is it subject to inheritance tax?
The pension, typically, so you can pass some specific amounts close to, if I'm not mistaken at the moment, I need to check the exact figures today, close to about, just under $1 million. You can pass almost under $1 million to partner, right, to your next beneficiary, inheritance tax free. There's a specific amount that you can pass on that wouldn't be impacted. If your savings is well above the 1 million then it's why they said you need to sit down with a financial advisor and say, how do we devise this and design it to ensure it's tax efficient, and when it's then passed on, for example, what I mentioned, the trust, right? So if you were to say the beneficiary for those was your trust, the whole conversation about inheritance tax goes away. Make sense? So it depends on how it's designed and your specific circumstances. If that's your intention to maximize and make sure it's tax efficient, then you can sit down and plan it well to ensure that you don't pay minimal.
All right, thank you.
pension, you said now, you say we can save our pension in 2 ways that can help us boost the income. A situation when you work with an organization and the organization is contributing a bit to your pension and you are contributing. So the government says it's tax-free, kind of. And when you're contributing personally, so you have to pay tax, isn't it?
Okay, so your workplace pension, right, with your company that you're working for, isn't tax-free. It's like a deferred tax. Let me explain. Now, you're contributing, say your employer says, I'll match up to 10%. Okay? And you do 10%. So you're both doing 10%, that's 20% into your pension. You would get a tax relief amount on top of it as part of this. So you probably only be contributing around 8, sort of, but you get one. Now, at the point of retirement, when you start to draw down, the taxable allowance for earnings still applies. So if you get to 67, 68 at the point of retirement and you saved the amount and you want to start to draw down the money, today the taxable tax-free amount without sort of NI is about 12,700 thereabouts. Hopefully that time it's 15,000 or it's 20,000, depending on tax changes and tax law. At that point, if you draw more than the taxable allowance, it's then taxed. Does that make sense? The tax is just deferred. So the government is allowing your pensions to grow without taking taxes from it today. Make sense? Okay. So the pot of money that grows over time for the next time you are contributing and you're working increases as a result of nothing being taken out of it. Now, at the point of retirement, you and your financial advisor or somebody will sit down and go, okay, what is the taxable allowance for the year? How can I draw down my pensions? I'll first be able to take that 25% of the entire pot. So maybe your pension pot is 500,000. You can take 25% of that out, tax free first. The remaining 75%, you can then draw down on a yearly basis based on what the taxable allowance amount is earnings. Yeah, the threshold. Does that make sense? So that means you pay less or little tax. So by the time of retirement, if kids have gone out, it's just you and your partner, you can downsize your house, you can do a bunch of things to allow you that I don't need to spend all that amount anymore. So I can withdraw slowly, and that then lasts you for the longest time, because most people will live over 100 or whatever years that they live. So it's just planning it properly. It's just your pension, it's just growth tax deferred to retirement. But you have to plan it, which is why I say it's intentional. You can't not know. Because if you don't know, the repercussions of not knowing is expensive.
So what of the second part? The one you contributing?
Good. So the other part of the question, the second part where you're contributing. So if you did a LISA or an ISA, the allowance for each year for an ISA is about £20,000. That's tax-free. No corporation tax, no capital gains, no income tax, no nothing, right? So if you're able to, your own personally, able to contribute up to the allowance of 20,000 each year for the next 30 years, you're going to have a lot of money, right? And the income you can take from that, no taxes.
No tax.
No tax. Yeah? No one can touch it. Sorry? But that doesn't get matched. So, you said it's not a bad rate to invest, but your employer's one is really good because it gets matched. Make sense? If your employer is saying, I'm going to give you 10% and you're contributing 10%, that's great. That will not match what you save in an ISA or a LISA. Because that one is much more significant. Make sense? The other point I want to make is, even when you're contributing to your workplace pension, I don't want you to just put it and sleep. No. That's okay? I need you to go and ask who is your workplace pensions provider? Is it Pension B? Is it Nest? Then go into your Nest account. All of you get an email from the provider. This is your login, this is your account. Log in, go in and find out where are they investing my money. What they do, and it's just the nature of financial services, is what we do. You would put all your money in the most default place, less risky, because we don't want you to lose anything. So we'll just put it in the default. Now, you don't want that. I'm not retiring for the next 30 years. So why would you just put it in a place where it's bonds mostly, it's just cash, it's commodities that are stable? No. I want you to be adventurous, right? I want it to, maybe not too much of a risk, medium risk, the risk level that I'm okay with, take some, bets, right? So that the growth over time will be significant. Now, I've seen where 2 clients, one is on the default, and they've been saving for a long time, 30 years, same sort of period. Another client went in, asked for a revisement of where their investment goes in terms of their pension. The amount, the difference between both of them, they work in the same company, by the way. Same company, same length of time, same contribution level, everything the same. But because one person went into the pensions and said, I want you to be a bit of pensioners in the first sort of 20 years of my life, right? So when I get to retirement, when I'm closer to 60 something, then start to go back to the defaults, right? The two, looking at both of them, the difference in the amounts that they had was around 250,000. Massive. So simply just contributing is not enough. When I say intentionality, to win you can't sleep. Do you understand? You have to be intentional. You have to know these things to ensure that you're getting the best for your money. Yeah? Okay. Question?
Sorry, on that note, I just wanted to ask a question. So, but there's a chance that it could, when you go into that medium risk, it could fall, right? You could lose. But then, I'm going on your nest and seeing that. Then you would go back to your low risk, right?
So do you remember when I showed the volatility side? Your job is not to look at, it's going up and down, this. I understand that's the nature of investments, right? It's the nature of it. What you need to understand is that medium risk, it's not going to be full concern. It will be a balance. So in there, they might put 30% in emerging markets, right? Another 20% in bonds, cash, things that are stable, right? Some of the contents of the default. Now, the remaining, they might go, right, let's put it in emerging technologies that can be a bit risky, right? I'll give an example. When Google's IPO and all those things were happening, and a lot of this sort of tech stock, at the beginning people were concerned. Most people, I don't want to take any risk, I just want my money in bonds. But those people that took those bets at the time, the return is significant. There's always volatility. It's just the nature of it. And you need to say, okay, how much risk am I okay with? You're not going to retire until about 60 something. Depending on your age. Now, you still got 20, 30, or 10 years or so to go. If you don't just dial it just a little bit higher to ensure that the risk is not significant, but it's okay for you to manage, the growth in those numbers can be significant. If you stay on the default throughout, as I explained, the difference could be hundreds, 200,000, 500,000, the difference. So for some employers are good. What those employers do is this. They'll say, Sam, I don't know your name. So they will come and they say, everybody that contributes to our pension scheme, and we match up to 8% or 10%, we would also bring in a financial advisor that you guys can voluntarily go and see. That financial advisor can then say, this is what your company pension looks like. Here's my suggestion to you. You've got the next 30 years before retirement. For the first 10 years of that 30 years, let's increase the risk level to medium, just a bit. For the next 10 years, we'll bring it back to the default, right? And then for the last 10 years, we'll not invest in anything stocks at all. We'll just go bonds, maybe commodities, things that are stable, government bonds, corporate bonds, just stable things, so your money is less. Over time, you would see a good return, right? For some might be younger and more sort of risk averse, if you will, and say, or risk taking, and they might say, for 20 years, I want you to really go at it. Try and see how much you can get in terms of the risk level. And then for the last 10 years, then take me back to default. It's up to you. It has to be designed by what your level of risk and you are happy to take. So have that conversation, go into Nest, read through some of the documentations, you do some research, go and speak to a financial advisor or financial coach, and they can help you work out what that balance might look like for you. You can't be looking at it every day. It's just the nature of it. You're not going to retire tomorrow, right? So you're going to retire, so it takes time.
So you can break up the amount?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Can you throw more light on life insurance?
Yes, thank you very much.
I mean, when it is taken,
there's a certain age. If you get to that age, my question again, if you get to that age and nothing happens, what happens to the money? Can it be transferred to the children, or the money has gone like that? To just give an enlightenment.
That's a good question. Thank you very much. And because of time, life insurance is really important. Now, if you've heard me have this chat before in the past, one of the things I say is this: the impact it could have on your family is significant. Now, life insurance, typically, I suggest term life insurance it makes sense as a term approach. It's specific premium, you're paying it every month for whatever the term is. Now, I'll come to your question. But as a whole, the way you want to look at life insurance is this: if you've got a property, if you've got a home that you bought recently, or your earnings, you've got a partner, you've got people who are dependents, you've got beneficiaries that you want to give something to. The idea is this: whatever you're earning now, multiply that by 10, that's the insured amount you want. If you've got a property, the value of the property, add it on top. And so that's the amount that you want to insure. Brokers for mortgages would typically would say, or maybe get critical life insurance. In some instances, I can see the need for it, but not all the time. So term life is probably the best approach for you to take. Now, in terms of the payment, you can decide who the beneficiaries of the amounts that is paid out in the event of something happening to you or your partner. You can decide who those beneficiaries are. The options for beneficiaries can also include a trust, as we go back to terms of the whole idea of pensions and things like that. If that money is paid to the trust, you can then decide the instructions on the trust, how you want the money to go. You don't want a situation where if you're insured by close to, 500,000, I don't want to just give 500,000 to a child. So you want to instruct in terms of the trust, how do you want it to work? Unless you can see that the child is able to manage and you're teaching them financial intelligence to ensure that they can manage their money properly. Now, if the term of life insurance is 50 years, up until you're 70, 80, depending on how you want to do it, and then you've done 80, the idea is that if you've done the savings for your retirement and those other things, your money, you've got enough funds to be able to be okay, and you're alright. The money then doesn't just get paid back to you. It's gone. And that's true. Hold on. Wait.
It's insurance.
Let me say this. A lot of us come from a place where they sell whole life, right? Whole life insurance is what they simply sell either in Caribbeans, in the West Indies, in West Africa, in Africa as a whole. Typically, what they sell is whole life. Yeah. What they will tell you is, you contribute, then every year you get to amount. The honest truth is that's not an investment. We always think of it as some form of investment too, but it isn't. I have family that have done this over time. You contribute an amount of money every year, right? Towards it. There is the interest is any amount they give you is negligible. I can promise you, it's nothing. Let me tell you how it works. You contribute to a whole life plan owner or provider. They take all your money. They then go and invest it in the places that we were discussing, and then get the 10%, the 7% over the lifetime period in which you've been giving them that money, right? And then give you a peanut of 0.5% at the end and say, well done, and this is so. And so we treat it as an investment. It isn't. Insurance is supposed to be in the event of something happening. It's the same as your car insurance. Do you get the car insurance money back again? Do you get it back? If nothing happens to your car, since you've been paying life insurance, the car insurance, have you gotten the money back?
In this one, it's kind of not right. That money cannot be given to the person. They are waiting for you to die so that they can transfer it. At least if it's meant, I would rather say in the event of like I'm sick, like a medical insurance, life insurance, it makes no sense.
So, sorry, man. One thing I'll say is this: just to address, I get the concern and I appreciate it. Trust me, I understand where people come from in terms of they've thought that if I contribute some money and they pay me back something, I promise you, you're not getting enough for your money. It's not the best way to be able to live. And whole life is not an investment product. It's really bad. It is fleecing people significantly, right? One of the reasons why in the UK, if you hear anyone selling whole life, it's very rare because they know it's not an investment. Anybody that suggests an investment product will get into serious trouble. Now, for the concern you made about maybe somebody is unwell, there's health insurance if you want to do that. I have health insurance. It's an extra that I pay in the event of something happening. And I gave an example in the testimony of if I didn't have it, I had the serious concern, and the NHS takes time for something to happen, I just go to private healthcare because I pay health insurance. So there's a reward there. If you even back home, if you've got family back home, pay for health insurance with them. That's a way to ensure that they're getting something and they're protected. Also, your emergency. If you plan your finances properly, you wouldn't say the idea of this money has simply just gone. But think about it. You're insuring for what? If you're under 30 at the moment, for example, and you want to insure yourself, life insurance, term life, for about 300,000, it'll probably cost you, what's a cup of coffee, £8, £5, £8, £10. And then you get paid 800,000 or 300,000 as an example in terms of the level of the cover. Do you think you can have that £8 and save it and get that 300,000 by doing it at the same time? It's a counterbalance. It's a protection against something happening. And the way you have to also see it is this. I don't want to leave the emotional concern that comes with the loss. God forbid, but if something were to happen to me and I'm gone, right? My wife then has and my children have the impact, and my family have the impact of the emotional loss of me, plus the financial loss. You've lost a whole person's income. Who is going to replace it? The idea is that insurance replaces that person's income for at least the next 10 years, which is why I say multiply by 10. That way, by that time, maybe kids have gone out of school, family have adjusted, they've downsized it, the house, they've changed things to ensure that they can gym properly managed. But imagine you don't have it at all, right? And you do a whole lifetime. So, to be honest, it's not great, right? And you do that, and then you now have the impact of the financial loss, plus losing you, like, emotional. I don't want to leave those sort of two things to them. So that's why I always encourage that we do so.
Can we just step our hands over to him and pray for him that he has been a blessing to us, that the good Lord is blessing greatly. In the name of Jesus. That the God of heavens and earth will remember him for good. That as he has